Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Today I've got a very interesting article for you. Well, most of it is stuff you've heard before, but there's one part in particular that I really want to spend some time looking at. Now, once again, it is a claim which we've all heard before. In fact, I think it's something that I point out and debunk every single video. At least it feels that way. But this is a little bit different because this particular author of this article has taken it to a new extreme. And not only that, but he's just come right out and said it. Whereas most of them do this on a regular basis. They don't actually come out and claim it. They don't come out and say what they're doing or what they're thinking, even though it's pretty obvious. But this guy does. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you're just going to have to wait until I get to the second paragraph, because I'm not going to spoil it. I will say, however, that there is a graphic that I commonly use in videos which sums up what we're going to be looking at perfectly. So the article appeared in something called The Swamp, which I think is very aptly named. And the article is called Understanding Men's Rights Activists and Their Lingo. The dangerous ideology of men's rights activists is alive and well in America. Well, we're off to a good start, aren't we? The first paragraph reads, men's rights activists, MRA, think that they're taking arms against a world that's changing for the worse, but in reality, they're dragging their feet in the face of much-needed progressive evolution. Yes. So, wanting to talk about male victims of domestic abuse apparently is dragging our feet. Because, you know, feminism has done such a good job about talking about male victims in the last 40 or 50 years, right? But, you know, they're the progressive ones, apparently. So, the thought process here basically is that anyone who agrees with this author is progressive, and anyone who has any problems with any aspect of what he might say or others like him is clearly regressive. They don't want things to change. They want to go back to the good old days, etc., etc. Of course, anyone who is capable of even the most basic of logical processes might think that there's another possibility, that maybe what they see as being progressive actually isn't. Or maybe there's other ways to be progressive. But we're talking about people who effectively belong to a cult, as we'll see with this particular individual. So it goes on to say, rather than representing a marginalized group on the edge of oppression, MRAs are actually the ones doing the oppressing and benefiting from a system rigged in their favour. Yeah, tell that to fathers in the family courts. Tell that to men who, on average, get longer sentences. Tell that to men who are homeless. Tell that to male victims of domestic abuse who get absolutely no fucking services whatsoever. But apparently we're the privileged ones who are in control, who are oppressing the poor women's, and the system is rigged in our favour, right? Yep. If you want to see how the system is rigged in our favour, just do a search for men's rights activists online and have a count of how many articles there are against us. 99.999% of them are all bullshit, by the way, as opposed to those articles which actually are in favour of us and are actually filled with facts and relevant points. It's a little bit hard to make the argument that we're the ones in control and we're the ones benefiting from the system when you have some evidence like that, which clearly states the opposite. Okay, now this is the paragraph, which when I read it, I thought, yes, I most definitely want to do this article. So I'm going to black out most of it and just reveal it as I go through it because I don't want to spoil it. It's that special. So it starts off with, America is a patriarchy. And yes, he is correct. America is a patriarchy. It's part of the Illuminati. It's run by the lizard people, and they're putting things in the water to turn the frogs gay.
You think I am like, shocked by it, so I'm up here bashing it because I don't like gay people? I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap. I'm sick of being social engineered. It's not funny.
Oh, hold on. No, none of that's right, is it? No, America is not a patriarchy. Anyway, it goes on to say, and one of the benefits of being a man in a patriarchy is that you get to have views as abhorrent as an MRA and still enjoy the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he doesn't mean to be a misogynist. Yes, because saying newborn baby boys should have the right to bodily integrity and not have their genitals butchered, that apparently is an abhorrent view that MRAs have. And, we dare not say men can be victims too, because apparently that's misogyny. Pointing out that men have issues and can be victims is apparently a form of misogyny, because only women are allowed to have issues. And if you dare to point out that men have issues, even using facts and figures and a ton of evidence, then, clearly you're a misogynist, because you're not talking exclusively about women. Okay, so the next bit is a good bit. It goes on to say, men even passively benefit from the patriarchy, which makes any group of men not consciously deconstructing systematic sexism functionally a collection of men's rights activists. So he's come right out and said that if you are not part of the social justice movement and you are consciously fighting against the patriarchy, then you are automatically an MRA by default. You don't have to know any men's issues. You don't have to call yourself an MRA. You may not have even heard of the men's rights movement. But simply by default, you are an MRA. Now, this is a type of thinking I've been pointing out for years. It's apparent that this is the way these people think. If you're not part of their selective group, then you are part of the other group, the outside group, which are all the same. This is what leads to them randomly selecting people on the internet and just calling them MRAs, even though there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that they're activists fighting for the rights of men in any way. It's essentially you're either with us or against us, or as I've pointed out in a graphic I've used all too often, social just us, everyone else is Hitler. And this is really the way cults think. This is essentially what cults do. They say that there are the chosen people who have all the answers. They're the chosen ones, either by God or the aliens or whoever, and they have all the right information. And then there's the outsiders, the non-believers, the threat that you can't listen to and can't take serious because they're dangerous. In fact, they're so dangerous that, you have to shun them and silence their voices and not listen to them, because merely listening to what they have to say is a danger. This is exactly what cults do. The way this guy thinks is exactly from the cult handbook. And I gotta say, it's fucking dangerous. But if we were to use his logic, we can come up with some very, very interesting things. Now, let me point out, I'm only going to make these arguments for the sake of demonstrating how flawed his logic is and how it can be turned against him if we were to play by his rules. If we were to point out that anyone who doesn't vocally support the men's rights movement is automatically a feminist, we can come up with a very, very long list of people who suddenly become feminists. Adolf Hitler, Genghis Khan, Charlie Manson. Come to think of it, Charlie Manson did hang out with a lot of chicks. Jason Voorhees, really influential feminist right there. I mean, sure, he's a fictional character, but, he's not a men's rights activist, so therefore, automatically a feminist. Pol Pot, Idi Amin, Steve Shives. Hold on, he actually is a feminist. But it's incredibly flawed logic. Just to say that you're either with us or you're against us, and anyone who's against us are all the same, and we can just apply one label to them. One size fits all. Anyway, we've got 2 sentences to go in this paragraph, and it actually gets worse, believe it or not. Wait until you hear this next bit. He goes on to say, a baseball team is a collection of men's rights activists. They're just passive about it. So if you just have a random group of men who have no connection to the men's rights movement whatsoever, they're not being activists or talking about men's issues, or possibly haven't even heard of the MRM, by default they're MRAs and represent men's rights activists, even if they're passive about it. Now, the interesting thing here is the root of the word activist is the word act. You cannot be an activist unless you are acting, if you're doing something. So you cannot be a passive activist. These two things do not go together, except, I guess, in the mind of this guy. Maybe English is his second language. I don't know. Maybe he has a problem with words. That's quite possible, because in the first paragraph where he mentions MRAs, he does have a citation, and it takes us to Urban Dictionary. So, yeah, maybe he doesn't understand what passive and active actually mean, and how those two things are opposites. Yes, folks, you've heard it first here. A baseball team is a collection of passive activists for the rights of men, simply because they exist. Absolutely amazing. Let's continue. He goes on to say, active MRAs represent the worst of the worst. Yes, talking about men's issues, that really makes us monsters, doesn't it? We should be ashamed of ourselves. They're men whose conception of masculinity depends on controlling and denigrating women. Now, you'll note he doesn't have any citations here. Big surprise. So, yes, wanting to stop newborn baby boys getting circumcised is typical toxic masculinity. It's designed to control and denigrate women, apparently. Yep. He goes on to say, and thanks to the internet, these men have been able to find each other, swell in size. Yes, swell in size, because you think anyone who isn't like you is an MRA. So I guess we do outnumber you in that sense. And even make some unsuccessful forays into the already sexist mainstream of America. You've got to have truly repugnant ideology to get denied the platform to speak that every man gets simply by virtue of being a man in a patriarchy. So every man automatically gets a platform to speak. Interesting. But MRAs don't get a platform because we're so repugnant. But anyone who's not a social justice warrior is automatically an MRA. So that wouldn't that mean that men don't get a platform to speak? It seems he's contradicted himself somewhere here. Oh, but hold on, he's talking about the active activists as opposed to the passive activists, right? The MRAs who are actually MRAs as opposed to just random people who aren't MRAs. Okay. So what he's saying is men apparently have free reign when it comes to a platform to speak, unlike women, apparently. Unless you're an MRA who's talking about men's issues. Then, because you're seen as so repugnant for daring to bring up men's issues, that platform is taken away. Well, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like a very good patriarchy, right? It's hardly benefiting men, is it? It's hardly benefiting men that if every time you bring up their issues, you're silenced by it. Yet women talk about their issues publicly all the time. Feminists have a massive influence in the media, universities, and the government. Yeah, very, very strange patriarchy. So the rest of the article, he talks about numerous different groups. I'm not going to go through every word of the article, but I will look at the groups and give you an overview. Link to the full article is below, as always, if you want to go read the whole thing. Needless to say, there aren't too many actual MRAs there, and by that I mean, you know, the active activists, as opposed to the passive ones who like to play baseball. So, the first actual MRA that the author mentions in this article is Warren Farrell. But I'm going to read the paragraph before that, leading up to the one where he mentions Warren Farrell in passing. So, the paragraph starts, men's rights activists reject the idea of gender equality between men and women. Yes, because saying, hey, you know, men have issues too, maybe we should take them serious and do something about that, is apparently rejecting gender equality. It's strange. It's a strange way of looking at things, but, you know, what do I know? I'm just a non-social justice warrior, MRA misogynist, right? So, let's continue. They think feminism was actually made up by women to trick men, even though there are so many things women are expected to do at work but shouldn't. Now, it's got a citation to another article, which I'm going to do another video on. That article deserves its own video. It is a testament to female privilege. I'll probably do that one next, and it's going to be an interesting video, let me put it that way. It continues. Female lives are actually valued more than male lives, says the MRA. It's the men's rights movement, so it's the MRM. And yes, female lives are actually valued more than male lives. We constantly see this in society, in media. It's something I've pointed out numerous times in past videos, so I'm not going to do it again here, because we still have a fair bit to get through. But any regular viewer of my channel would have seen that one shown many times. It continues. Accepting that claim as true is what it means to take the red pill. Actually, no. It can mean that, but the red pill simply means waking up to see an aspect of the world that you previously were blind to. I've said it before, but the perfect example of this is the Red Pill movie with Cassie J. She had swallowed the feminist Kool-Aid. She believed the world worked in a certain way, and when she actually talked to MRAs and did research, her eyes opened to the other side of the story, that men have issues too. That's what it means to take the red pill. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be awakening to see men's issues. It's a metaphor, so it can be used in many different ways. You could be raised as a member of a certain religion, and then you discover atheism, and you could consider that to be red-pilled, for example. He goes on to say, that's right, men's rights activists have figured out a global conspiracy of immense consequence, but they talk about it using references to the Matrix. A global conspiracy of immense consequence. Now, that's interesting considering this guy believes that America is a patriarchy.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
In fact, I'm pretty sure he'd believe the entire world is a patriarchy. I wonder if we should consider that a global conspiracy theory. What do you reckon? He goes on to say, a spoonful of resentment makes the red pill go down. Well, it is true. I definitely resent articles like this, which are nothing but bullshit. Next. Once you see the truth about how society values women more than men, you can't unsee it. Yeah, and there is some truth to that. I've seen a lot of different reviews about the Red Pill movie, and you can tell the biased ones from those who aren't biased, those who have looked at it and gone, well, I never thought about it that way before. There is some truth to that. Men do have issues, and they're not spoken about. Those people have been red-pilled or partly red-pilled, as opposed to those who start with the preconceived conclusion and spit the red pill out and drink some Kool-Aid. Next. That truth is why men work higher-risk jobs, which is the theory of male disposability popularized by Warren Farrell, an ex-feminist who became an intellectual grandfather of the contemporary MRA movement. Yep, that bit's actually accurate. And that's the one and only time he mentions Warren Farrell. The citation is to a Mother Jones article, which I'm pretty sure I've gone through in the past. He continues, that truth is also what leads to divorce rape, the term MRAs use to describe divorce settlements that unfairly favour women thanks to systematic sexism against men. Okay, I'm not going to say that an MRA has never used the term divorce rape, although I can't think of a time that I've heard an MRA use the term divorce rape. I'm sure it's happened. I don't think it's a very common term used by MRAs, though, and it is most definitely not exclusive to MRAs. And he finishes off the paragraph with, it's feelings like these that drive men into the welcoming arms of the red pill. Yeah, the red pill's a metaphor, okay? It doesn't have arms. So the only other MRA mentioned in this article is Milo, and when I refer to him as an MRA, I kind of have to put a little bit of an asterisk next to that claim, because I'm not exactly sure he is an MRA. I definitely have heard him advocate for the rights of men in the past, so that would suggest that, yes, he is an MRA. However, his main focus is anti-feminism, and I strongly suspect the only reason he brings up men's rights issues is because they're good ammunition against feminism. So is he an MRA, or is he an anti-feminist who uses MRA talking points because they're convenient? I'm honestly not sure. It's, I guess, a kind of a grey area. But for the sake of argument, let's say that he is an MRA, because this article is really lacking MRA, so I guess I can be a little bit generous. So the first paragraph about Milo says, Milo Yiannopoulos is as famous as men's rights activists get. He's even been talked about in the monologues of late-night talk show hosts. And why not? He was one of the first people to get behind Gamergate. He launched a campaign of targeted harassment against Leslie Jones. Yeah, Milo would disagree with that, but anyway. He collaborated with Nazis on his pieces for Breitbart. No citation, I see, so I can't really check to see if that's true, can I? That's an interesting claim. He collaborated with Nazis on his pieces for Breitbart. Is the author suggesting actual Nazis, like neo-Nazis? Or is this the more popular, anyone I disagree with is a Nazi? I suspect it might be that second one, considering that's so popular these days. He goes on to say, many of which he didn't even write himself. Once again, no citation. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on Milo, but I can honestly say I've never heard that claim before. Is this a popular claim for Milo, that he didn't write his own articles? I would be surprised if that's true. But once again, no citation, no evidence to back up this claim. It goes on to say, and he's a provocateur who uses people's rage to generate publicity for himself. Yeah, I can think of plenty of feminists who do exactly the same thing, like Clementine Ford. But you're not going to criticise her, are you? I'm sure she's just being a strong, outspoken woman. Right? Yeah. And the paragraph finishes with, the only edgelord bigger than Milo is President Sex Criminal himself. President Sex Criminal. I wonder what side of politics this author is on. Although I guess he could be talking about Clinton, right? Yeah. So the next paragraph on Milo says, and what's Gamergate? It's a hashtag used by a bunch of misogynist gamers who targeted female game designers and commentators with harassment and threats of rape and death. Yeah, that's one way of looking at Gamergate, which may not actually be all that accurate. But anyway, why? Because these misogynist gamers perceived that there was unethical collusion between feminists and video game journalists, which there was. There most definitely was. Hence the call and response. What is Gamergate about? Ethics in video game journalism. Yeah, and I think there should be ethics in video game journalism. And I even go one step further and say that there should be ethics in all journalism, including articles like this one. Unfortunately, we don't get much in the realm of ethics or honesty, do we? Because this isn't real journalism, this is just propaganda. Poorly written propaganda as well, I should point out. Now, I think I must be heading towards the 30-minute mark in this video, and I still have a ton to get through. So I think I might leave the non-MRAs he mentions for the next video. I'll make this a two-part, because I'm not going to get through the rest of it in a video that's going to be under an hour. And there are one or two groups I do want to take a closer look at. So I think I'll leave it there for now, and I'll finish this article off in part 2.
Tell us briefly how that started.
Well, I wrote a review of Ghostbusters that was very critical, and she didn't like my review. I wrote 2,000 words about what a mess and a missed opportunity the movie was. Also in the review, I said, I'm not the type to get offended by anything. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a social justice warrior. I'm not a race hustler like Al Sharpton. But if I were, I wouldn't be particularly thrilled by her character in that movie, which is a very one-dimensional 80s sort of stereotype, or the sassy black woman, all this kind of stuff. You know, the black people I know were cringing during that movie. They were like, "Oh my God, is this really how we have to be in blockbusters?" And so I made that point too. I said she was spectacularly unappealing as an actress. Even by the standards of that movie. And then on Twitter, I made a few jokes. Everybody knows that I like black men. So she blocked me on Twitter, and I screenshotted it, and I put the caption, "Ugh, rejected by another black dude." Yeah, that's all I did.
Okay. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I know that what I think sparked the most controversy, not really your comment per se, because I read some of the other things. I don't think she left Twitter because of you. I think she left
horrible things from people, ugly, disgusting things, but I don't feel the need to spend my life language policing other people. If other people want to, say disgusting things, that's on them. It's not on me. I'm not responsible for what 350 million people say on Twitter, or whatever Twitter's user base is at the moment, and it is just absurd and insane, and it doesn't make any sense to suggest that, writing a movie review is directly responsible for racist nastiness on the internet. That's insane. Well, it doesn't make sense, which means you have to look for other explanations, and the other explanation is Twitter just doesn't want me on the platform anymore because it doesn't like me.